When the Roman Empire collapsed, the world did not simply fade into darkness, it shattered. Roads crumbled, kingdoms rose and died overnight, and the memory of Rome became both a legend and a weapon. For centuries, everyone, from warlords to kings, tried to claim Rome's ghost. But what truly happened after the fall? Who survived? Who ruled? And how did the ashes of Rome shape the world we live in today? Before we begin, like the video, subscribe, and write in the comments, where are you watching from? In the year 476 AD, the unimaginable happened. The mighty Roman Empire, the heart of civilization for over 1,000 years, finally broke apart. The last emperor, a teenage boy named Romulus Augustulus, was forced to surrender his crown to a barbarian general named Odoacer. There was no epic final stand, no massive heroic battle, just quiet humiliation and the simple realization that Rome was gone. For centuries, Rome had ruled highways, armies, trade, language, and law. Its cities glowed with marble, aqueducts carried water miles across valleys, and its legions marched with unstoppable precision. But inside the empire, rot had already begun. Corruption, endless wars, economic collapse, political assassinations, layer by layer, Rome hollowed out. When it finally collapsed, there was no plan for what comes next. The empire fractured like broken glass. Local warlords took lands that once belonged to Roman governors. Farmers who depended on Roman protection suddenly found themselves prey to raiders. Trade networks collapsed. Coins were replaced by barter. Once bustling Roman cities turned silent, and the people? They didn't think they were living in the Dark Ages. They thought their world had ended. The great Roman roads that once connected Europe became dangerous pathways patrolled by thieves and mercenaries. Libraries burned, scholars fled. Knowledge was scattered across monasteries where monks copied ancient texts, often by candlelight, just to keep memory alive. Yet something strange happened at the same time. Even though Rome had fallen, its idea refused to die. Kings began calling themselves Roman. Church leaders adopted Roman titles. Laws were rewritten but rooted in Roman order. Latin, the language of emperors, survived inside churches, courts, and documents. Rome disappeared physically, but spiritually, it haunted Europe. This ghost of Rome would shape wars, crowns, religions, and empires for the next 1,000 years. And the world after Rome was only beginning. When Rome vanished, it didn't leave behind empty land. It left behind pieces, broken territories, scattered armies, abandoned cities, and millions of people desperate for protection. Into this chaos stepped new powers, carving kingdoms out of Roman ruins. They were called barbarians by the Romans. Goths, Franks, Vandals, Lombards, Saxons, but they were not wild savages. Many of them had fought inside Roman armies. They spoke bits of Latin. They traded with Roman merchants. Some had lived near Roman borders for generations. But now there were no emperors to stop them. Across Italy, Odoacer ruled in the name of Rome, but everyone knew the truth. Rome was history. In Gaul, what we now call France, a new force emerged, the Franks, led by a powerful young warlord named Clovis. He unified rival tribes through war, alliances, and brutal strategy. But his most important decision wasn't made on the battlefield. It was spiritual. Clovis converted to Christianity. This one act changed history. By adopting the faith that had grown inside Rome, he won the loyalty of bishops, nobles, and ordinary people. Churches supported him. Priests preached his legitimacy. Suddenly, he wasn't just a tribal king, and he was seen as a ruler chosen by God. Across the old Roman world, similar stories unfolded. The Visigoths ruled Spain. The Vandals controlled North Africa. The Anglo-Saxons spread through Britain. Old Roman villas became fortresses. Roman towns became fortified villages. Latin blended with local dialects, slowly transforming into new languages: French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian. Rome had fallen, but Rome was being reborn in fragments. Yet life was harsh. Roads deteriorated. Bandits stalked travelers, diseases spread freely. Education became rare. Most people never traveled farther than a day's walk from their village. But there was one institution that survived Rome almost untouched: the church. While emperors disappeared and kings died in endless wars, the church endured. Bishops replaced Roman governors. Monasteries became centers of learning, medicine, and charity. Monks preserved ancient scrolls, not just religious texts, but mathematics, philosophy, and history. Without them, huge parts of human knowledge would have vanished forever. And so a strange balance formed. Warlords provided swords, the church provided legitimacy. Together, they began shaping a new world. But ambition was rising again. Ambition to rebuild something greater, something unified, something that could claim the legacy of Rome. That ambition would eventually belong to one man, a king whose empire would stretch across Europe, crowned as the new Emperor of the Romans. His name was Charlemagne, and his dream was nothing less than resurrecting Rome, not with marble, but with faith and steel. What began as scattered kingdoms was transforming into a new order, a new political map, and a new civilization built on the bones of the old one. The world after Rome was no longer collapsing. It was learning how to stand again. By the 8th century, Europe looked nothing like the Roman world that once stretched from the deserts of Africa to the forests of Britain. It was fragmented, countless small kingdoms, endless rivalries, and ceaseless wars. But among these fractured lands rose one figure determined to unite them. Charlemagne, the King of the Franks, warrior reformer, visionary, ruthless when necessary. Charlemagne did not inherit peace. He inherited instability. His empire was surrounded by rivals. Saxon pagans to the north, Lombards in Italy, and other ambitious lords who dreamed of absolute power. Instead of retreating, Charlemagne pushed forward. For decades, he fought wars almost every single year. Castles fell, territories expanded. Tribes were forced into alliances and sometimes forced into Christianity. His empire grew until it covered much of modern France, Germany, northern Italy, and beyond. But conquest alone did not make Charlemagne great. He wanted something bigger: order, learning, and civilization. He invited scholars from across Europe to his court. He standardized writing so books could be read more easily. He promoted schools for nobles and priests. He issued laws designed to create justice instead of chaos. Slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Markets reopened, trade routes revived. Literacy returned, at least among the elite. And on Christmas Day in the year 800, inside the great church of St. Peter's in Rome, something symbolic took place. As Charlemagne knelt in prayer, the Pope placed a crown on his head and declared him Emperor of the Romans. In that moment, Rome was reborn, not as a city of emperors, but as an idea of power. To the people of Europe, this message was clear. The world may have changed, but the Roman legacy still ruled. Of course, his empire was not perfect. There were rebellions, harsh punishments, and bloody campaigns. His rule relied on force as much as faith. And after his death, the empire fractured among his heirs. But the dream did not disappear. Future kings and emperors across Europe would claim that same legacy. They weren't just rulers. They were heirs of Rome. From the Holy Roman Empire in Germany, to the kingdoms of Italy and France, even to distant Russia, which began calling itself the Third Rome. Rome had fallen, yet somehow every great power still wanted to be Rome. But beyond the crowns and battles, something even larger was happening, a transformation of culture itself. Cathedrals rose where temples once stood. Feudal systems replaced Roman administration, knights replaced legionaries. And while Europe rebuilt, another world, powerful, scientific, and advanced, was rising beyond its borders. Trade, knowledge, and wealth were not centered in Europe anymore. Power was shifting, and that shift would change the fate of continents. Because the story of what happened beyond the fall of Rome is not just a European story, it becomes global. While Europe struggled to rediscover stability, the wider world was moving forward with astonishing speed. Trade networks stretched across deserts, seas, and mountains. Cities flourished far from the fallen heart of Rome, reminding humanity that civilization did not begin, and certainly did not end, with a single empire. Across the Mediterranean, in North Africa and the Middle East, powerful states rose with vibrant economies, scientific curiosity, and sophisticated governance. Scholars translated ancient Greek and Roman texts, preserved them, debated them, and added discoveries of their own. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, engineering, all advanced. Meanwhile, Europe still wrestled with famine, feudal conflicts, and fragile kingdoms. But slowly bridges formed through trade. Italian merchant cities like Venice and Genoa began connecting Europe to distant markets, spices from Asia, silk from China, gold from Africa. Every caravan and every ship carried not just goods, but knowledge, and knowledge is contagious. With each passing century, Europe was slowly catching up again. absorbing ideas that had traveled thousands of miles. But the world after Rome was not peaceful. It was defined by competition. Kings fought for land, religions struggled for influence, merchants competed for dominance. From crusades to commercial rivalries, the desire for power reshaped maps and lives. New fortresses rose. New alliances formed, empires expanded, sometimes fueled by ambition, sometimes by fear. Yet even in chaos, progress grew. Agriculture improved, population increased. Cities came back to life, emerged as new centers of thought. Step by step, societies began moving away from survival toward innovation. And slowly, Europe began preparing for something massive, something that would change history forever: exploration. Ships would soon depart in search of new worlds, new wealth, and new routes. These voyages would connect continents, create global empires, and unleash consequences that would shape modern politics, economics, and cultures. From the ashes of Rome, humanity didn't collapse, it reinvented itself. But the question remained, who would control the future? Was it the kings who claimed Roman authority? The merchants building economies across oceans? The scholars shaping thought and science? The answer would unfold over the next centuries, through wars, revolutions, discoveries, and transformations that would lead humanity toward the modern age. Rome might have fallen, but the echo of its existence guided rulers and dreamers alike. The world had stepped beyond the ruins, and it was racing toward destiny. By the late Middle Ages, a dramatic transformation was underway. Europe was no longer just surviving, it was awakening. Trade was booming, cities were expanding, and curiosity about the wider world was exploding. The memory of Rome still influenced politics and architecture, but humanity was stepping into a completely new chapter. In Italy, something extraordinary began: the Renaissance, a rebirth of art, knowledge, and discovery. Artists studied ancient statues and ruins, trying to rediscover beauty, realism, and proportion. Scholars searched dusty manuscripts to uncover wisdom from Greece and Rome. But they didn't just copy the past, they innovated, questioned, and experimented. Science advanced, maps improved, ideas spread faster than ever. Then came an invention that changed everything forever: the printing press. For the first time, books could be produced in massive numbers. Knowledge was no longer trapped in monasteries or restricted to elites. Ordinary people could learn, debate, and think for themselves. New ideas about politics, religion, and human rights took root. But progress brought conflict. Old systems resisted change. Powerful institutions feared losing control. Reformations and revolutions shook kingdoms to their core. The world after Rome was entering an age where ideas could overthrow kings and entire societies. Meanwhile, explorers sailed across oceans. New continents were charted, empires expanded overseas. Trade networks spanned the globe, creating vast wealth and unimaginable suffering. Colonization, exploitation, and slavery scarred millions of lives and reshaped cultures forever. The consequences of these actions still echo into our world today. Technology evolved alongside ambition. Gunpowder changed warfare. Improved ships transformed trade. Scientific discoveries challenged traditional beliefs. Step by step, humanity was moving toward the modern era, an age of nations, revolutions, capitalism, and industrial power. And yet, through every century, rulers continued looking backward, to Rome. They designed buildings with Roman columns. They wrote laws based on Roman principles. They dreamed of empires as mighty and eternal as Rome once claimed to be. But history carried a lesson. No empire lasts forever. Rome fell, others would rise, and someday they too would fall. The world beyond Rome was no longer defined by ruins. It was defined by growth, struggle, discovery, and constant change. We were entering the threshold of the modern world, where technology, politics, and global connections would reshape everything people believed about power, society, and destiny. And still, one final question remained. What did Rome truly leave behind? Not just cities, roads, or ruins, but something deeper, something that still shapes our world today. More than 1,500 years after the fall of the Roman Empire, its shadow still stretches across our world, in ways most of us barely notice, yet live with every single day. Look at our cities' straight roads, bridges, domes, arches, organized grids, public squares. These ideas were shaped and perfected by Roman engineers and architects. Even the way modern capitals design government buildings, Strong pillars, white stone, massive halls, echoes Rome's dream of order and power. Look at our government senates. Courts.legal codes. Constitutions.citizen rights. Written laws. All of these have roots in Roman political thought. Even when modern nations claim to be democracies or republics, they often borrow Roman symbolism. Eagles, laurel crowns, marble monuments, reminders that leadership is connected to a long tradition of authority. Look at our languages. Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, all evolved from Latin. Even English carries thousands of Latin words in science, medicine, law, and philosophy. When doctors speak, when scientists write, when lawyers debate, they often speak the language of Rome without even realizing it. But Rome's legacy is not only about greatness, it is also a warning. Rome grew greedy. It overextended. It ignored corruption, injustice, and inequality. Its rulers believed power would last forever, until one day it didn't. Every empire that came after, from medieval kingdoms to global superpowers, has faced the same question. How long can power last before it collapses? The fall of Rome reminds us that civilizations are fragile. They rise through unity, discipline, creativity, and shared purpose, but they fall when they forget why they exist. Yet there is hope in this story, because when Rome fell, humanity did not vanish. Instead, new cultures were born, new systems emerged, new voices shaped the future. The world after Rome became a laboratory of ideas: democracy, science, faith, philosophy, art, exploration, technology. All of these collided, clashed, grew, and transformed into the modern world we know today. So when we walk past ruins, study history, or hear stories of ancient empires, we are not just looking backward. We are looking at ourselves. Our roads, our governments, our languages, our dreams, all hold pieces of a civilization that refused to disappear even after its walls turned to dust. Rome fell. But its echo continues to speak, warning us, inspiring us, and reminding us that every age believes it will last forever, until history proves otherwise.